Welcome to the show, everyone. I'm so excited to bring today's topic to you. I've been thinking about this. I've been working with this. I've been excited to share this with you on a more global scale. And so I'm excited to talk with AC today. She is the CEO of Eden Labs, and I can't wait to dive into the idea of plant medicine, psychedelics, and microdosing. Welcome to the show, AC.
Thank you. Thanks, JJ. Thanks for having me.
Well, you and I have been in touch with each other. You've been educating me and helping me learn some things about this topic. We were introduced by a fellow friend and physician, and I appreciate that. It's been a couple of years that we've been talking about this kind of stuff, and so you're the perfect person to bring on. So before we get into the content and the material of microdosing and psychedelics and mushrooms and all that kind of stuff, psilocybin, why don't you tell people a little bit more about Eden Labs and your background and what you do?
Eden Labs is a 30 plus year old extraction and distillation company, primarily in the manufacture of the equipment for natural products, functional foods, supplements, et cetera. And then they're also associated with intrinsic laboratories that does a lot of toll processing, as does Eden Labs. Like for instance, we're doing, tonnage of ashwagandha right now. So, I love what I do, and it also brings me some knowledge base on just how powerful plants are.
How did you get started in this? What's the background and how did you end up working and running a lab?
Um, well, oh, it's a long story. I'll try to shorten it. But I was living in Miami, and I read Dr. Andrew Weil's book, The Natural Mind. So I also read Dr. Vandana Shiva's book, Stolen Harvest. And that got me very interested in regenerative farming. It also deeply goes into indigenous plants, how people have used them for thousands of years, et cetera. And then I decided, wow, okay, I need to probably start some kind of retreat or something for type A personalities, of which I'm one. So is my mother, triple A personality. And we need help. We need help to recenter ourselves, to reconnect ourselves. I came back to Washington to get a degree in nutrition because it's key in how our brains function and our moods are. And I ended up meeting Frederick Chess, who had this company. And I was like, oh my God, this is fascinating. It's the same thing, but from a totally different perspective. And so he asked me to come run the company 20 years ago, and that's what I've been doing. So I learned a lot about plant medicines and have helped people, but from not the way that I'd planned when I moved out here, which is how life sometimes lovely works.
Yeah, I don't know if I ever shared with you, Dr. Nasha was the first to really ask me outright. Other doctors on the show had made mention about psilocybin in the brain and, just planted seeds. And I didn't really pick the seed up because I thought, okay, well, it didn't apply to me quite yet. And so she was the first one who really sort of looked me dead in the eyes and said, I'm surprised you haven't done it. And I said, well, why would I do it? And she said, for validation. I'm like, do I need validation? And I guess, but then the more I thought about it with the cancer patients I was working with and how resistant they were, and when I sort of distill my message down and what I'm helping people to do, it's learning how to be happy. It's learning how to love yourself. And it's a
Yeah.
really simple concept, but it's really hard to do when you have all the beliefs and
Mhm.
habits and patterns and core wounds that really make up the way that we react to life. And so that's when we really kind of talked about it and how a lot of her patients had outlived their diagnosis. She had outlived her diagnosis after accidentally taking 10 grams of psilocybin and then proceeded to be like she accredits that to one of her survivals. I mean, she did many things, like fasting, but it was really that, oh, okay. And so I thought, well, if it's going to save people's lives, why wouldn't I know this? Why wouldn't I try this? Why wouldn't I be open to this? I'm a very open person. I just in my mind thought it was drugs and everybody, I know people that do
Right.
recreational drugs and they're not like responsible people who are digging deep into their souls. So I just sort of had a judgment about it. But when I saw it as a vehicle for helping people to have an emotional, to induce a near-death experience, to induce that in somebody and to have their whole life change in a minute, and was powerful, is powerful. And so it's really an honor to watch that happen and to work with this.
It
And so
is.
we have two different sides of what I want to talk about today, which is why I asked AC to come on the show, because in terms of distillation of psilocybin or products and what it can do for us, both on a obviously a journey level, but also more importantly, like this was the meat of the show, was the microdosing piece. There are so many pharmaceuticals that have so many side effects that do not help people. And in the, especially from my point of view, and I'm not a doctor, so don't take my word for everybody and don't credit me for it. But I look at something like a drug for depression or anxiety, and I see that as a temporary bridge if it's absolutely necessary to get someone maybe more functional to then be a little more conscious to make better decisions, to maybe eat better, to help their neurotransmitters. But there are so many people that have been on these drugs for years and years and years. And besides the issue for the gut, it doesn't help you create new neural pathways. It numbs it. So I want to talk about what you think and have experienced or from your research and your studies about the power of microdosing and who needs to be doing it and what are the downsides of it, what are the benefits of it, and what common diagnosis or people that are dealing with certain, ailments or situations would really benefit from trying microdosing, and then for how long.
I think that there's a benefit for everyone in the modern era to microdose. I mean, of course, there are multiple ways to microdose. One of the things that Eden Labs helped develop, which is now in clinical trials via another company in Australia, is a standardized dosage. We worked on a particular kind of strain because they all have different alkaloids in them and tryptophanes in them that do different things. So what we wanted to do was for clinical use, because it was obvious that this is extremely effective. And if you're going to be using it in a clinical setting, the duration of the event needs to be shorter. The onset needs to be shorter. We were able to achieve that. We were also able to almost completely eliminate nausea, which can be extremely distracting when you're trying to get in touch with yourself and, listen to these inner voices and intuition when you're, really nauseated. And it is exactly dosable. So given that, you can do a microdose of 50 milligrams. You can do a microdose of 150. It is so personally um, tuned that it could benefit anyone because it works with the 5-TH2A receptors, right? Which helps regulate mood. It's tied into your serotonin level. So a lot of these antidepressants, that's what it does. But as you said, a lot of it has a lot of side effects, and it's not really working with your body. The psilocybin works with your body to help you produce more neuroplasticity, which is awesome for anti-aging. It's awesome for mood. It's a mood stabilizer. It helps sleep. I don't know anybody who can't use any and all of that.
So in this way, it could kind of be looked at like a vitamin.
Yeah.
Right. And I think what a lot of people assume that it means is that I'm going to feel high. And a microdose is not that. A microdose is not that. If you feel high, it's too much for you, right? Potentially.
Yeah.
And that dose can be adjusted.
Hmm.
But in terms of some of the expectations, like, so I have a client right now whose brother, very, very depressed, lot of trauma, been in therapy for a long time. And I keep saying to her, can you please tell him it's not his fault? Like, therapy generally doesn't work. And, I mean, everyone who listens to this show knows that I believe that. I got asked recently in Dallas at a podcasting conference by a therapist to come on her show because she said, I think the therapy industry is hurting people. And I was like, good on you. Because she's a therapist and we talked and like we're kind of doing some of the same things in the way that we approach, looking at emotional things. But I've added this component for many reasons. One, people who are resistant to change and they don't realize it. Like we don't know what we don't know. Like the brain, you have your predispositioned based on traumas and your, the way that you look at the world and your belief system. And if you want to change that, you have to, there's several things you can do, but why not? I mean, to me, like what's the fastest path to growth and shifting and changing? And when you look at plant medicine, it's a freaking plant. It comes from the ground. It doesn't have any other chemicals in it. You're not adding things to it. You're not mixing it with things. And to me, especially through experience, there's a magic to allowing yourself to create those neural pathways. Everyone on the show, unless you're new to the show, understands neural pathways. Okay. So creating new neural pathways means just like in your muscles, when you lift something and you have certain muscle fibers that do that action, the brain does too. The brain has it as a neural pathway for everything you think and believe in the way that you act. In order to change that, we have to do different things. Now, microdosing helps to open up I remember doing my 2 gram journey and I felt like, and it was not, I was so shocked by how much I experienced. I thought, well, what's more going to teach me? Well, I've done a lot more since then. But the 2 gram, like my left brain, and it doesn't numb anything, right? Am I correct in that it doesn't shut off anything? Psilocybin.
No.
No.
Yeah.
Okay. So my left brain went bye bye. Like it went, I'm going to sleep, even though I know it didn't shut off. And my right brain went, hello, I am awake and I'm alive and we're going to have colors and we're going to have them. We're going to be. And I was like, whoa, okay. I mean, it was that clear to me that I felt like the logical, masculine, linear part of our brain goes, oh, I get to rest now. I'm going to take a bath. I'm going to take a nap. While my right brain is now fully online, opening pathways that we don't, sometimes we stop because it's painful. We've got trauma. We've got pain that we don't admit to. So I love, and let's talk a little bit about the strain, because I know many times I forget. It starts with an M. That's all I know.
Yeah, what you were just talking about, though, is basically ego dissolution. And I think a lot of people, when they hear ego dissolution, thinks that they're losing themselves and that the ego, there's a difference between id and ego, and they're losing themselves into this. But actually, all it is allowing yourself less self-criticism, giving yourself some space. You're dissolving that hardwired connection to how you typically deal with things. So it's giving you some space to look at things a little differently about yourself, about different issues that you might be having. It's like snowing, fresh snow in a landscape. There used to be paths and now there's not. And you can look around like, oh, well, that's actually a better way to get down this hill. So I just want to clarify that, if I don't know if you have already talked on that on your show before,
No,
but
that's okay.
a lot of people have that idea, and I'm like, no, that's not really exactly what it is.
Well, it's a good term because I haven't used it, ego dissolution. I mean, I don't think I told you about my big journey I did on my birthday. I had had several people who had done journeys, and I was jealous. I was like, oh, I could use it's sort of like, in a way, it felt like detoxing. It's like an emotional detox, right? It's like
It
anything that's been
is, yeah,
bothering you and like you want to get rid of. And I'm seeing people, they're coming in, they're doing it, and they're like they're feeling so free, they're so renewed. I'm like, man, I need that. And then I was like, you know what? What? I'm not traveling on my birthday. This sounds like and I did a whole podcast episode on this, so I'm not going to go into it again. But it was because anyone that's listened, and if you are listening and you haven't heard that, you can go back to March. I can tell you right now, it was probably published sometime in March because that's when my birthday is. And one of my clients had said, oh, they want me to die. And I said, oh, no, no, it's not a physical death. Don't worry. It's just your attachment. It's your ego death.
yeah,
And then, but I'd never thought about it that way. And of course, she's a Scorpio. So of course she said that. Because, Scorpio is death and rebirth and rising from the ashes. So that was a perfect thing for
yeah,
her to say. But then I thought, death, that's a very interesting way to think about it. And so on my 6 gram, I got pummeled like 10 times. I'm like, whew, what? I gotta die more today? I mean, I died like 6 times that day, but in such a freeing, releasing, like it just felt like you unlayer, you unburden, and you emerge lighter and clearer. And so I love the ego dissolution. I'm called ego death. Your ego gets to die. You get rid of these attachments that you don't even realize you have until you're in
yeah.
these kinds of scenarios. So can we talk about the strand? Because I know, so there's someone I've had on the show, a shaman, She's written a couple books, and I love, 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 love her first book. I have everybody read it. It has nothing to do with plant medicine, but through her journey, she starts to do plant medicine. And she does a whole book on, she does 12 journeys, 5 grams every month, and she writes about it in this book. And the way she describes her experiences are very, very different than the
Mhm.
experiences that I have had and others have had. And I've had multiple, and I've asked like, well, what's this mushroom? Because there are lots of different mushrooms, right? There's so many different kinds, and they all do something different. Can we talk about that?
Yeah. Uh, yeah, and I work closely with a gal who does intensives with people at Hazel Row, and we talk about that, and of course I'm very interested in the whole science behind all of it and the clinical trials. Oh, this is very, very important because most people are completely unaware that most of the clinical trials that are happening around the world are on synthetic psilocybin.
I didn't know there was such a thing.
Exactly. Everyone's always shocked. There's only two companies in the world. Eden Labs was one of the ones that helped set up the first fully legal manufacturing facility in Lesotho in Africa a couple years ago. And then there are the whole fruit extract is what's being used in Australia in those clinical trials. So when you start talking about all of the other components that are in the mushroom, like the tryptophans and the alkaloids and everything, in most of all of those other trials, those are lost. So can you really call that plant medicine? I mean, you're
Probably
taking,
not. Probably not if
I,
it's made in a lab.
you know, maybe I guess I'm a purist this way, and our company has been for a long time, but it's just, it seems to be a propensity for um, pharmaceutical and for drug companies and for companies in general to be able to uh, take one component out so that they can patent it. And, which, I understand that as a business person, but talking about the medicine of this actual thing, there are components in it that do different things in each kind of strain. And there are many, many strains. And if anybody is familiar with cannabis, it's the same thing. Like first, all they thought about was THC, 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 THC. Like, well, there are a couple hundred different components in there, and they all do different things. That's why we have the sativa and the indica right now. And if you're a real connoisseur, you can narrow that down into the different cannabinoids of what actually works with your body and what doesn't. Same thing with the mushroom. And what I was interested in, because like you, I think this really works and I want to help people. And I feel like taking away the nausea was fantastic. But the other thing that I thought that would be really beneficial for people is to, all right, so what is the component in the mushroom that actually creates the euphoria feeling, as opposed to having a whole lot of visuals coming at you, and particularly if there's patients who have never really done psychedelics, they've never smoked pot, they don't really drink a lot, and all of a sudden they're having all of this stuff coming at them instead of experiencing themselves, which is what the point generally is. So I have been working with several different strains, and I still am, and figuring out um, which ones have the most of what that is more beneficial. And then you can also sit there and target that to different patients, but it's still a whole fruit product. And that's how you can actually, create IP. There's a different way to create IP, if that's what your mode of operation is. You don't have to ignore what naturally exists and works better. Um,
Well, I
so
think I think with all this legal talk, they're looking at, well, how can we benefit from it, right? We don't want to
yeah, yeah.
So we're going to benefit from it by making money. So we have to do something to it in order to for us to patent it. And
Yes.
yeah, so I get that too. And if
Mhm.
that, we'll look at when that happens. What are the negative side effects? What has been added to this? What is taken away? But looking at the purest part of it, what are some of the strains that you find most effective? Because that was the issue with the book when I was reading the shaman's book, her second book, and is that she kept talking about seeing all these things and everything was like outside of her, and it was about like her eyes were open and she was seeing things, which is what I think most people are afraid of, is seeing things, like having your eyes open. And she would be
Mhm.
mentioning, and then there was a lot of fear, like in her
Yeah.
12 journeys there was a ton of fear.
Yeah.
And I kept thinking, well, who would want to do it after that? I mean, I don't mind digging into the fear if I when I know there's a resolution, but I also have experienced a couple different strains now. And the favorite one is eyes open, because it's at first like, and I'm in nature outside to see what starts to change. You start to see things become more clear and they're more beautiful, and you can see afar and details that you didn't couldn't see before. And then it's like, okay, I now know that my brain is starting to register. It is there. It's opening things up. And now I'm going to go in. I'm going to put the mask on, which I resisted masking because I felt enclosed. But then when I understood that the journey was inside, then I was like, oh, I'm going inside now. All right, I know what to do. I'm going to go inside. So it's a different feeling than it was before. So what are some of these strains that are, and maybe we can, if you know of any that you would say, don't like stay away from these, uh, because in case they do that, because I don't know anything about all the different strains and what they all do, like with CBD and cannabinoids and CBN and CBG. Like I have many of those as well. We've talked about that on the show also, the cannabinoid aspect. So what are some of the preferred strains for this deep work? And if you have any recommendations of things to stay away from?
I really and Malik in particular. But I am working on, looking at multiple other ones, but I do not like penis envy for multiple reasons, including the name.
I hear you on that. That's the one that when I did a local journey, and it was after doing 2 grams of the Malabar, and I remember thinking, "Wow, what's that was amazing. Like, what's 5 grams going to teach me that two didn't?" Haha. Well, anyway, then I went to that it was like a group thing, and I that whatever they use, which I would know if you told me, it was super mild and it was dosed 2.5. Anyway, I like the way that it was. I learned a lot. I
But
appreciate the
with B
experience.
plus, B plus is very mild.
I think it was a
And,
cap, a golden cap or something,
oh, golden teachers?
maybe.
Mhm.
Maybe I could go back in the text and find it, because that was when I really, like, I sat up like, whoa, wait a minute, what's going on? Nothing's really happening. I just did 2 of this, which I didn't know what it was, and they kept saying, oh, it must have been penis envy that you did. I said, I don't know what I did, but it was very different than this. This is very different. There's really nothing really happening here, and I kept waiting. I'm like, when's something going to happen? Nothing was really happening, and of course, how it was dosed, I didn't think that was most effective either. But again, I learned a lot. I got to experience more than one thing, so that, because that's what people don't realize when you're out there and someone has mushrooms that they've grown and they're giving you a mushroom. Um, let's talk about that for a second, because it's a point that I want to make for people who are out there like, oh, I can get mushrooms, cheaply somewhere else or whatever. I'm like,
Right.
yeah, but you don't know what you're taking, number one, and
No.
you don't know how much psilocybin is in the actual mushroom, right? Because all that plant fiber and medicine, like you could have a gram of mushrooms, like weight, but that's not a gram of psilocybin. So you really can't track, correct?
Right.
Right. So at least I know from an extraction exactly what I'm getting. I know how much exact, and there's no other fibers or proteins or carbohydrates within that plant medicine that my body has to break down. It's just going to get straight to the extraction. So if anyone's out there, buying mushrooms for people, or, growing your own mushrooms, just know that you're not tracking. So in order to really understand, and it's fine, people do that all the time. I understand that. And they're having their experiences, and even in a microdose, like, I don't even know how would you do that with a regular mushroom. I guess by weight, you would be assuming that if I had like a little, and that's fine. If it's working for you, it's working for you. But Malabar, and what was the second one you said? Merrick?
Malik.
Malik. Okay. Um, okay, Malabar and Malik were good. Penis envy was bad. Can we just talk a little bit about why you said no?
Okay, so back in the day when I would have mushrooms in a social setting or whatever, and I never really had a good experience. In part of my experience, and I've talked with a lot of people about this because I'm very interested in how all these different strains work with people. And so what happens with some strains for me and for quite a few other people is it makes you want to lay down, be immobile. You can't really move. You are um, really cold. I get this tension knot in between my shoulder blades. And it's just like this. And so I have all of this going on. And on top of that, I am nauseated. So I'm just like, when is this going to release me? So that I can and when is this going to ease up? And so I wanted to avoid all of that and helping people reconnect with themselves because it's so important and we're lacking it so much. I'd love to hear that you're doing this outside. That's perfect.
Well, not the whole time, just the beginning.
But yeah, just
Because I
being
do
out
want
there.
people to be
Yeah.
my best experience is immobile. I don't want to move because I mean I want to I've experienced when I really understood, because that whole mask thing was, I didn't mask up on the 2 gram. And I remember having this beautiful journey and I was freezing, by the way, and I was on the ground.
Yeah.
And then Doug had to move me. He had to because I'm like, can you move me to the bed? And I had blankets and I had I was freezing. And I did eat. That was the wrong thing to do at the beginning. But that one was like an amazing first, really like dipping my toe in a way to go kind of like Alice in Wonderland. Like I'm going down the rabbit hole, right? But it really wasn't like a huge heart opener. Like I've been tracking dosages for me as a barometer of for other people. Again, not everyone's the same because I crossed over at 4.5, and 4.5 for a lot of people does nothing if you're doing a major journey. So it just really depends. It's not a
Yeah.
hard and fast rule, but for me, there are some of those side effects, but I don't mind that because I think like I've talked about this, like the answers are inside it. Like we're talking about deep traumas and pains that literally reside in our body. And
Mhm.
and if I'm dancing around and being social, I'm distracted. I don't want anyone distracted from what's coming up inside their body.
Yeah, and yeah, my sorry if I really wasn't clear about that. Being immobile is fine, but it's the all of the other sensations that make you feel like if you even wanted to be mobile, like to get up and go to the bathroom, it would be impossible because
Got
all
it.
of these other things,
Yeah.
being laying there and being relaxed and being in is the goal.
Okay. So you don't like penis envy for the physical side effects, but what about is it more like visual? Would that be one of those visual ones?
And yeah, and the visuals are great too. And I find that a lot of times people are like, "Well, I'm gonna hope and I'm gonna see lots of visuals." Well, that's fine if that's what you want to do. But generally, for most clinical work that I've seen, um, it's distracting, because all of this stuff's coming at you. Um, and there's a nice balance there where your mind is open and your heart is open, and you can have a flow of things that are going on. But if it's too intense, for a lot of people who haven't had psychedelic experiences, it's just too intense. And there's less, I think, usually in those strains, there's less of the body euphoria that goes on. And that's what I think is the most beneficial thing. And
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a recreational drug user, so I don't smoke pot, never really have. I mean, I do drink, but I mean, even that's the biggest drug I do besides caffeine and sometimes sugar. And so that's why I had a resistance to all of this, which I've said a couple times on the show. So I want to go into the clinical trials that you're doing in Australia. Is that and in Africa? Did I hear
yeah,
that correctly? And you're using whole fruit instead of the pharmaceutical grade, not taking out some of the polyphenols and some of the other chemical components that are good and that do good things for you. How is that situation being handled? Like I remember seeing on How to Change Your Mind. So if anyone hasn't seen How to Change Your Mind, with Michael Pollan, it's a Netflix documentary. There's 4 parts to it, and psilocybin, I believe, is number 2. two or three, and I would definitely recommend everybody watch that. But the way that they showed clinical trials was somebody being in a room inside with a therapist or somebody who was had a notebook or a pad, and the person was laying in a bed, and but they were in a closed room. It looked, and then they'd have whatever experience they would have. Is that kind of how you're doing clinical trials in Africa and Australia?
Just to be clear, I am not doing
You are
clinical.
not.
We,
Eden Labs is not.
no, we
No.
produced the compound. We helped figure out a way to create the basis of the medicine to be used by other people for these trials.
Who is doing the trials?
There's a company out called Science. I think it's out of Canada. And then there are several different organizations in Australia doing them currently. Most luckily, they're focusing on addiction and depression, which is it's tremendously helpful for. And I find out that the word addiction too is a little loaded because I've seen a lot of benefit from people who just they've had a couple of deep dive and they're like, alcohol just doesn't really interest me much anymore. It's not like they were drinking overly much or anything like that. It helps break um, just cycles in general of things. And they're just like, yeah, that's what I would normally do. And now I don't think I really want to do that. So it's part of the magic of it.
Right. I love that once I thought, I don't know if I told you that story. It was like this, I had somebody coming and she was doing three, and I thought, oh, I got to do that first to see how that feels. And it was so from to go from two to three, it was a heart opener. It hit a place that I was still holding on to pain and resentment at my mom for not coming to visit me because I bought this house and I was like, and quality time is my love language. So I had this whole experience and I'm crying about my mom. And I don't know if that was influenced by the person that was coming and her story and her situation, but it didn't matter. And I felt like I didn't go in or deep enough, long enough. So I thought, okay, well, I'm going to revisit this later. So then I went and did a 4.5. Did a 4.5, thinking, okay, I'm going to go back in. Here was my thought. I'm going to go back in and clear out more of this mother stuff. And I'm going down. I'm like descending. I'm becoming the earth. I'm waiting. Nothing's happening. I'm waiting. I mean, not in a, I'm relaxed. I'm having a nice relaxed moment. And all of a sudden, boom, I see my cousin who died 20 years ago. And I was like, oh, shit. Okay. So that was a whole, like, you think you can't go in and going, yep, this is what, because I've done other medicines like San Pedro, which is like mescaline, right? And for that, shaman led us into the like having an intention. You had to have an intention. So I was like, okay. And the intention was perfect and it worked out. But like, have an intention. Yeah, have an intention to be shown what you need to know. That's about as much of intention I think you can have because you're going to go on whatever journey you're supposed to go on, and nobody's going to influence that except your internal body and your own brain and you're like and your guides, guardians, angels, spirits, ancestors, whatever. Like this is not, it is out of your hands.
Yep.
So, and that's what I think scares most people who have control issues is the I can't control anything. It's like, yep, like I know you, Doug, everybody always says, Doug, have you done it? Have you done it? Are you going to do it? It's like, no, he's not interested in losing control. He doesn't understand the value of it quite yet. And it's okay if he never does. But for me, I'm like, yeah, let's go. Show me what I need to let go of. I'm ready. And so I think it scares people, but that whole
That's
intentionality of like, yeah, you're not going to choose what you're doing. You're good luck. Like, we don't know what's going to happen. It's a free for all. We're going to see what you need. And we have no other than to be present, to be willing, to surrender, to open,
yeah.
I mean, I do a whole like ceremonial thing. Like people get very, we bring in ancestors guides, we surrender in a deep, profound, spiritual way, and then just allow, which is really what kind of how we should all be living life. But but when we're putting ourselves in those different kind of situations, let's talk about again. Let's go back to the microdosing conversation for a second, because and
Mhm.
any of the reasons and any of the if you. I know you aren't running the trials and they're not yours, but if you have any information or you've been hearing anything about some of the results from these trials, or even personal experiences or friends or other people who are seeing a difference, because in that How to Change Your Mind. It was addiction, PTSD. I mean, that was one of the reasons why they did those studies, was to see how does psilocybin or a psychedelic help the healing of PTSD, people who've been in war, people who've lost people, depression, cancer, anxiety, addiction. What has been your experience or observation of microdosing and or journeys for those?
So typically, Hazel, who I mentioned before, the control issue is a big one for people. Um, but I think people, particularly older people, they get to a point they're like, all right, I have lived my entire life based on the influences and pressures of other people. And I'm 50, 60, 70. Like, who am I really? So you talk about control. Are you really in control? I mean, have you lived your life in control, really? So I like to provide, advice to like microdose first. Start understanding what it does and what it doesn't do, how you feel, how you don't feel. And then, kind of take the fear out of it and then just start those neural connections happening. Just really, literally start opening your mind and having those connections start to happen. And then go into your deep dive. And part of the intention is grounding. You need to ground yourself. You need to help the set and setting, the situation, be able to create that distance, that dissolution between everything else that affects you and has pressured you your entire life so that you can just deal with you. Like, who were you when you were 6 before the world started telling you like what girls are supposed to do or boys are supposed to do or how you're supposed to dress or eat or a gazillion other things? Like, who are you really? And it's a practice. You can go in and have a deep dive and it can be very enlightening and very helpful. But when you're practicing it, as you said, the next time you go in, you don't know what it's going to show you, but it's always appropriate. I have never seen it not be what you needed to see and hear at the time, ever. And then the integration with a therapist afterwards, and or somebody in journaling and rereading and understanding what happened, where you're at, and the path that you're on is where a lot of the healing really occurs.
Yeah, there has to be integration.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's a nice experience, but it will wear off
Yeah.
if you don't
And the
change the
science,
habits.
science is like they've done studies at Johns Hopkins too, in New York University, and they're discovering that the effects of this, as far as for depression, can last for weeks afterwards. Um, so I mean, and this is real science. So we ought to be able, and I think it's probably likely that psilocybin will be legalized before cannabis. Um, Not sure why, but I guess it's probably just because there's so much cultural, political pushback from cannabis because they were so successful with propaganda and that whole the drug war, and oh, it's a drug. And that's another thing that's hard for people to get over. It's like, ooh, I'm going to take a drug. Well, you're not
Look
really.
in your medicine cabinet. You have
You're
drugs. Your drug
the
dealer is your
drug that's
doctor,
really hurting you is probably the sugar you're eating every day.
or all the
That is
pharmaceuticals from your
actually
physician.
literally killing you.
Right.
So let's just quantify and qualify what we're actually putting in our bodies right now.
Right. I had this conversation with Dr. William Davis about, and I don't remember what we were talking about, because he has a supplement that he's created, and it has a lot of great benefits inside, and great. It's 4 very clean ingredients, and he's making another one right now. But I mentioned about microdosing instead of, I think it was like antidepressants or something. I'm like, well, how many side effects? Just look in your medicine cabinet. Just research anybody. You pull out the medicine and you research all the side effects. What is it meant to do? One thing. and potentially you've been given this for one beneficial thing. And then how many side effects are there? It's probably 5, 10, or 20 of them. And then if you have any side effects, you're given another medication for the side effect. And then how many negative things? I mean, you start adding up. Doug, my partner, told his mother to read the label of her, like read about her drug. And she said, "Why would my doctor give this to me if it has all these side effects?" Well, because that's what doctors do, everybody. That's their tools. That's what they got in their toolbox. That's how allopathic medicine works. So don't think for a half a second because your doctor prescribed it. It is not a drug. It is a drug. And it is,
Those are hard drugs. I call those hard drugs. And they have their place. And, but I don't, if you cannot do them long term, if you need to have that for a short period of time to get through something and then wean yourself off of it and increase this while you're happening, because, like if you're taking an SSRI, you need, to be careful with taking other things with it, including psilocybin. So weaning yourself off with your doctor of the SSRIs and using this to help you do it. And then also create more neuroplasticity while you're doing it that actually helps make your life better is a good path. And I've seen multiple people go down this path and completely get off their SSRIs.
great. Well, that hopefully all of you that are on them or know people that are on them. Now, what about in terms of talking with a doctor? I have a client who's doing that right now, and we had separate conversations. She knew she wasn't going to go to her doctor and say, "Hey, I'm going to microdose psilocybin." She just said, "I'd like to wean off my medication," because she knew in order to experience the benefits that she'd have to reduce her dose. And so
Mhm.
and so adding on to that has been really felt really good. And she's felt really, really good in when she's titrating down. What do you just recommend that people who want to do that obviously work with their doctor on the titrating down,
Mhm.
but maybe don't not mention they're going to microdose? Or, I mean, at this point, I don't know how many physicians are like on board with that.
A lot of them appear to be on
Really?
board. Yeah, is the one some what I've heard and some what I've seen, I would say at 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10
Oh,
are on board. They can't do it themselves, obviously, because they spend a lot of money, spend a lot of time getting their licenses, and they don't want to risk losing them. But especially therapists also realize the limitations and they went into therapy to help people. And if there's another methodology that's going to help their patients, what I've seen is they want to help them do it. So, you can put a little feeler out there with your
okay.
doctor, see what they say. But generally, I've seen they're like, yeah, do that. I can't do it, but,
Right, right.
but
Okay, well,
just
that's
do it.
promising. Well, that's a promising thing to think
Yeah.
about and to know. What other trends are you seeing with this because again, in other countries, it's either legal or becoming legal, or obviously you're doing clinical trials. We're doing clinical trials here, right? But there's this, I don't know, process that everyone has to go through. So what would you think? What's the future looking like?
Well, an interesting study just came out that I thought was really exciting on mice, on longevity and anti-aging. So I was like, oh, but that's primarily because it lowers chronic stress in your cortisol, helps you regulate cortisol and maintain cortisol. And then it encourages, neurogenesis and neuroprotection, which, helps your brain, which is primarily one of the things that, as you age, if you're not eating and exercising properly, and then your brain starts shrinking and or you have others kind of sort of neurological problems. So I think we're going to probably start seeing and hearing a lot about that. And then there's just the support benefit from other adaptogenic plants and or mushrooms, lion's mane, ashwagandha, rhodiola, putting those things together to create an enhanced supplement to your life experience um, would be great.
Sounds good to me. Okay, anything else you would like to educate this audience and anyone's listening about either microdosing or psilocybin in general or psychedelics?
I think one of the things that is really, really important is that people spend more time in nature. And if you can, if you want to do a deeper dive in a setting with the caregiver, um, do that again, half of it or a third of it outside somewhere. Sometimes just go on a hike, spend some time out in nature, just sit under a tree, listen to what it says. I mean, we are so completely ignorant of what actually happens in this world as human beings. I mean, the whole quantum physics of everything. So when we were talking about intention, for instance, we don't know how, like, so we just recently, figured out that we were in our grandmother's wombs. And whatever she was feeling, I think it's for like 4 months, whatever she was feeling and going on with her. Same thing with our mother. We don't know how connected we are to the rest of the universe. We don't know how connected we are to our ancestors. We don't know how connected we are to other living things. And I think we're starting to discover that they are far more connected than we are and can have a comprehension of. So if we're spending time out there just being open and appreciative and grateful, I think that's a very, very powerful experience with low dose mushrooms or any psychedelic, really.
When I watched How to Change Your Mind, I did, even though I know it's a lab-based thing, when I kind of like watched each segment to see kind of intuitively what I thought or felt like, oh, would I try that? Would I do that? And when I saw the LSD, I'm like, yeah, I do LSD. I haven't, but I would. And then the whole mescaline thing became a San Pedro, and that was divinely orchestrated, and that was great. And then MDMA is a good addition now, but
Hmm.
it wasn't something that I ever was interested in by itself or for my own sort of, because I again had a judgment with a lot of people who do it, and it just sort of looks like, I don't know, I just didn't, it was recreational. Again, I have a judgment against the recreational piece. So when I did 1 gram, I went out and that was enough just to be like what you just talked about. I sat outside the whole time and I felt like I was watching television. I was watching my backyard. My backyard was
Yeah,
my television. It was so busy.
but you can feel it too.
Right. I mean, I was mesmerized by the tree was just in the wind, and it was like the sun on the tree and the way that it was moving and the squirrels and the birds and my water in my pool. Like I was mesmerized by everything that was happening. It happens every day, but I was actually in tune with it and slow enough and calm enough and grounded enough to receive it in a different way. And so I love that. And I do think that nature, I agree with you, that nature is super important for more than just grounding, but being connected and from taking us back. I mean, that's one of the things I love about Malabar, is the return to the earth. I tell people that, if it does what I think it's supposed to do for you, you will feel like you've dissolved into the earth.
Yep.
You will not only you ego dissolution, your physical dissolution, like you will forget, like you'll just be one with everything in a grounding, really like just a base kind of way. It's when people think of like getting high, high feels like I'm detached. And that word
Right.
means I'm detached. I'm floating above. And this to me is not that at all. There's not a
No.
this is a grounded, this is a stillness. This is a truth that you only get to when you die. Like, and we can make it happen before that so you can make those changes because I don't want to need to die first in order to learn my lessons. I'd like to learn them while I'm still here. And I know that's never going to be possible in our complete human experience, but generally speaking, if you're dealing with some rough stuff, why wait until you're on your deathbed to be like, oh, I wish I would have learned that earlier. How about learn it now? It's available to you.
Yeah.
Take advantage.
Yeah, I love the feeling too, the way you described it too. And I feel like I'm luxuriating in my own body.
Hmm.
It feels very luxurious and um and just yeah, really lovely.
When I found the people here to do the thing with the journey with the group, which yeah, what she said to me was this medicine will change you early on. So and I definitely agree with that. However, I'm wondering for you, has it changed you and how has it changed you? I mean, you start off by saying you did it for, type A personalities.
Well, I started getting into the ideas of retreats as far as basically just nutrition, exercise, stopping because there are a lot of type A personnel. They just don't know how to stop. They just keep going until they don't even know who they are anymore. And so, but as far as my psychedelic use, um, I find it, periodically it's a reset. And I'm able to go, okay, this is me. I started going off center here for a little while, getting too involved in some other things that people expected, or, I was trying to achieve that I didn't really need to, or whatever. And it just recenters me. And I just, it's calming, it's empowering. I feel stronger. I feel more centered. I feel more clear-headed. And that's what it does.
Has it changed your has it changed your set point of your own sort of energetic output or frequency or thermostat, if you will, for, I mean, were
Oh
you
yeah.
more type A before?
Um, I'm still type A, but I'm my I think people who are type B, people who are strivers, people who are achievers always need to be achieving something or they're just uncomfortable. So now I just strive to be really good at meditating, or I strive to be really good at, things that are more growth oriented for myself and not necessarily outside of me. That's a reflection of what culture thinks I should be. So if that makes
Yeah.
any sense.
Yeah. I remember when she said that to me, she goes, it'll change you. And I thought, okay, cool. Yeah, I'm open for whatever is the right thing for me. I don't need to cling to, I have a strong personality, but I don't need to cling to like what that means for anybody else but me. Like,
Yeah.
right? So, I think it's changed me. How it's changed me. Well, how it changed me on that journey in particular. And so this podcast will probably be out. I have a member of my community who has been struggling with cancer. This is her fourth time, and I'm sure by the time this airs, she probably will have transitioned. But when I had my last journey, her mom came to me. Her mother has passed, and I got a very strong message that she needed to celebrate her life while she was still here, and I was no longer afraid for her. And I just held this prayer circle in a group that she's in. She wasn't there because she's in hospice right now, but I asked her if it'd be okay if I told other people that she was in hospice and if we could do a prayer circle for her. And she said yes, based on Lynn McTaggart's work of Power of Eight, and not with the intention of necessarily healing her at this stage, but to really help the transition. And I, held it, and it was about 30 minutes long, and it really brought me back to when I was coming out of that last big journey, that I really was like, yeah, I'm not afraid for you. I'm not, you're going to be, death is not something to fear. Maybe people fear how they're going to die, like, is it going to hurt? But the idea of transitioning, because it's not like these physical bodies are not who we really are. It's a fraction of who we really are. And so I know that, and that's when Naisha had said like validation. I'm like, I don't need validation. I know this in every cell of my being. However, what it's done what it's done is taken it to an experience where my centeredness, I guess that was my centeredness is more like it's more normal for me to be centered. I pulled a card. I had a group here. I did a beta group this year called Healing the Mother Wound. There weren't any psychedelics involved, but we did Healing the Mother Wound, and a lot of healing around, and just a lot of stuff for neuroplasticity and awareness and releasing about, mothers and all the things with that. And in that, there was a recognition that I had about, like, just coming back to who you are, like coming back to your center, and I pulled a card that said purification. It was the white Tara, I think. I forget which, is it a Hindu goddess? Anyway, whatever goddess it is, and it said purification, and I was like, oh, okay, and then I read it, and it basically said you're becoming so fine-tuned that even the slightest out of balance or out of alignment or in a toxic environment is going to really be negative for you. And not that it says don't be, like I believe in balance. Like I still have alcohol, I still have sugar sometimes, right? I don't live like that. I can't, that's like having an ease and a flow. And something that you said that I want to make sure everyone really understands about the microdosing, about a deeper dive, the cortisol, and that study with the rats. Stress. Our bodies do
Yeah.
not heal.
Killer.
Right. Your body cannot heal
Mm-mm.
in that state. If you're
Oh,
not in parasympathetic, which is this grounded, calm, centered, connected place, that's where the body heals. Most of us don't ever get there unless we're sleeping. And when you're sleeping, it's only for a couple of hours because most people have so much anxiety that they wake up in the middle of the night with all the stuff that they didn't pay attention to. So your sleep, you don't have good sleep. You're a stress ball. You wake up in the middle of the night with thoughts and anxieties about your day, about your, all those things. When do you ever hit a stage where the body's actually in parasympathetic and you can heal?
right.
Never.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you're living in your amygdala brain all the time and you're, fear based and your brain's on fire, your hippocampus can't function. I mean, you can't learn. You can't be open. So you have to keep that cortisol and those stress modes down. And there are multiple pathways to make it all come together. Psilocybin is not the only one. There's diet, exercise, or other supplements. There are multiple ways to make that happen, but it is possible. Um, if that's what you're focused on is your own health and, just simply being, because that's all we're here to do is just be ourselves. We're in a huge cosmic thing. We are a small piece, but that one small piece is there for a reason. And if it's to be gone, I mean, you're meant to be here and just to be.
Yeah, life is a gift. You chose to be here. You incarnated in this lifetime for a reason. So we don't have to be so like stressed out about it. We can take it with stride, understand that there are lessons and ways to expand, and that contrast is going to be a part of our life. And how do we handle it? How do we deal with it? It's never not going to go away. We're not going to never have an issue, a problem, or a negative feeling again. It's how do we become resilient? How do we not take it so damn personally? How do we rise above it? How do we have perspective about it? You just mentioned we're a
Yeah.
speck. Like when I did that prayer circle, I brought us out into the fact that like the earth is a speck in the
Mhm.
galaxy. So we're humans on the earth, right? Go galaxy. The earth is a speck in the galaxy and we're a speck on the earth. So in like really put your mind around that for half a second. Um and yeah, so let's enjoy this life and let's find some tools that can help you get unstuck from the thing. So, AC, thank you for this conversation, for Eden Labs and all that you do and all that you're helping the world to do. I'm on board for this next evolution of helping people in a more organic and natural way with profound effects to change their life. So I know that you're heading that up. So I appreciate your knowledge, your wisdom, your willingness to share what's going on.
Likewise.
Thank you. And is does Eden Labs have a website if anyone wants to check out?
Yeah, it's just edenlabs.com.
Great. So if anyone's interested in checking out more of that, or of course you can also facilitate questions through me
Mhm.
to AC. And thank you, Dr. Chris, for introducing us. It's been a
Yeah,
wild ride for the last couple of years, and I look forward to more in the future. So thank you so much for being on the show.
thank you.